back here with US Chess School, and I would like to continue along and show an interesting game. So recently I've often been showing some of my own games, largely because they're just easier to prepare for lessons. And yeah, I think I'm fall victim to being lazy just as often as everybody else does. But for today, I thought I would show an interesting game between Topalov and Ivanchuk from many years ago that I thought was interesting. And I did the semi-Slav course for Chessable, and I remember that this game at the time had made a strong impression on me. And it was one of the things that one of the games that inspired me to treat the semi-Slav a little bit differently than Ivanchuk did in this game. Hi, Austin. Good to see you. Okay, so the game started off as a semi-Slav. It came from a Nimzo move order, but it's the thing. Somewhat older game from 2008, so 15 years ago. I mean, the computers were not nearly as good back then, and so there was a lot more scope for humans to use their own brains and opening ingenuity than there is now, which was kind of nice. So the game started off as a Moran. After bishop d3, who knows what black is supposed to play here and why? Yeah, red says d4, yeah. So a good rule of thumb in the Moran is that whenever white plays specifically bishop d3 without his pawn on b3, this tends to be a very good time to play d takes c4, because white cannot take back with the b pawn and he can't do any tomfoolery. So for example, if white were to have played bishop e2 instead, should black play should black play d takes c4 here, or no? Why should black not play d takes c4? Anybody know why? There's two reasons. Yeah. So the two reasons are, one, there's no immediate necessity to play dc4. Normally you want to play dc4 when white is threatening e4, and here you don't. Black is not threatening e4 just yet, or white's not threatening e4 just yet. And the other is that because after dc4, white's bishop is not hit, he doesn't have to take back right away, and he has the time to play a4 instead, which is something I wrote about on Chessable as well, and I think is a bit tricky for black. I recently, in the American Cup Blitz, I did beat Quesada in this position with white. I don't really believe you should analyze Blitz games super deeply to extrapolate opening ideas from them, nor should you take results in Blitz games as an indication if an opening is particularly good or not. But it was a point to me that I managed to put a point on the board there. All right, so in any case here, there came bishop d3. Ivanchuk went ahead and took on c4, which is best. And then, of course, once you have played dc4, what is our next move? b5, as everyone knows. Bishop d3. And Ivanchuk chose the safest move here, but probably not the most combative one. It is the one I recommend on Chessable, but I think black should be more careful after that. Anybody know a good move for black now? There's three I will accept, but Ivanchuk chose sort of the most solid one. Yeah, so far, I don't think anyone has given me a bad move yet. It's pretty hard to find a bad move here. Yeah. So the three serious moves are bishop b7, a6, or bishop d6. And so they're all sort of aiming to accomplish different goals. So the real point is that if white is allowed to play e4, he will take the entire center from black, which is going to be bad news and something that we don't want. So if white is going to play e4, black has to be ready in response, and there's a few ways you can do that. So one way is with the move bishop b7. After e4, black is ready for b4, knight a4, and c5, when the bishop on b7 is very well placed to pressure the e4 pawn. Another is to play a6 with the point that after e4, black can play c5 without hanging the b5 pawn, and he's contesting the center right away, and these positions can get pretty goofy pretty fast. And then finally, there's the move that Ivanchuk played, which is, or he did play bishop b7, actually. I recommended bishop d6 in my course. But yeah, Topalov now played a3, which I think is a pretty reasonable move. He's stopping black from playing b4. It turns out, actually, black can play b4 anyway. It's not a terrible move here. Sorry, guys, I'm a little under the weather today. But in this game, so here, Ivanchuk went ahead and played bishop d6 instead. If he lets white play e4 next without being able to play c5 or b4, it's probably going to be a bit annoying. So here, black's always ready to mate e4 with e5. There came castle, castle, queen c2. And by some move order or another, we have transposed into one of the big main lines of the semi-Slav. So there's a bunch of reasonable moves for black here. And the one that Ivanchuk played is definitely not bad. And it's, I think the last time I got this position in a classical game, it's the one I chose, but it's definitely a little bit shakier. So to Arvind saying, why not play b4 as white? This is a very good question. The reason why we don't play b4 with white is there's only one reason to play b4. What is that reason? To stop black from playing c5. And is black ready to play c5 yet? No, black is not ready to play c5 yet. So if we were to play b4, what's black going to try to play in response to pressure the b4 pawn? Yeah, we're going to go a5. So basically being able to always meet b4 with a5 is a little annoying. So we don't necessarily want to play b4 until black is threatening c5. Let's imagine black were to play a6 here, which is a move that I don't recommend, but is, I guess, playable. Now we can play b4, and it makes a lot more sense because we are actually worried about black playing c5. And this line does exist for black, and he can play a5 now, and the position sort of gets messy. But now we have clearly seen that black is losing a tempo here because he has played a6 first and then a5, which is a big improvement upon if we were to play b4 directly. But so basically here, there's sort of this weird waiting game because if white is going to play b4, black doesn't really necessarily want to waste a move on playing a6 first. So, well, let's see if you guys can come up with an interesting move for black here. I mean, I have some thoughts and I have a move that I think is best, but this one is a bit more open to debate. And Vihan, I like that move a lot. I think that is the best one in modern times. So, yeah. All right. So Daniel is suggesting e5. This is actually an important misconception about the Moran. I think you very rarely want to play e5 with black until white has played e4 first. Because when you play e5, white often has this plan to go knight e4, which can become extremely annoying after take and take. If your pawn were back on e6 here, the way you would want to handle this position would be to play f5 to hit the bishop and then throw c5 after that, so open everything wide open. Here you cannot play f5 and you cannot play knight f6, and the h7 pawn is hanging, and this is already looking pretty uncomfortable. So the reason that e5 does not work very well is that white is going to slam the knight into e4. And as such, what you generally want to do is not play e5 until white has committed to putting the knight on e4 first. So Samuel Gu has said a5 or rook c8. Those are both reasonable moves. I like rook c8 the most, which is extremely direct, aiming to throw c5 pretty quickly. White's main move now is b4. And now, does anybody know what black should do here? Yes, Vihan. Well, someone's done their homework. Yeah, everyone knows a5. That's good. But after rook b1, now what? And this is where it gets a little bit of fun. Yes, Vihan. Let's see. This is really about knowledge. You probably won't find this move if you don't know it in advance. Yes, Samuel, well, it's good. All right, so some people are studying my course, yeah. So basically here, black can go ahead and play c5 anyway. It comes down to Shankland rule. What's our opponent? What do we really want to play? c5, why can't we do it? What happens if I do it anyway? And here it sort of just works. It was important to include a5 first because if you play c5 directly here, I believe that this position is not totally kosher. For example, after knight d5, gf3, I think they go queen g5 and it's like queen h5 or something here. But after rook g1, I'm not convinced that black is going to equalize. So the point is that when we play a5 first, and then after rook b1, go for the same variation, take bishop f3. Of course, I should point out if gf3, knight c5 is fine. Black is threatening both like bishop h2 with rook lifts, which is the bigger threat, so white's going to have to do this. But after some queen c7 and rook c8 and knight d5, we're easily going to get the piece back, and black is good. But the point is that here, after bishop takes f3, c takes d6, and knight d5, that in these analogous positions, black is going to win a tempo on this rook. So like check here, here, and I forget exactly how it goes, but like, let's say for instance, bishop e2, after knight takes c3, if we had this exact same position with white's rook, like on a1 instead of b1, because we provoked him to b1 by playing a5, we could play e4, for example. But here, like, because black has to lose a tempo, we're good. Like, I think there was a line like this, and this just draws immediately. Anyhow, this isn't supposed to be a class in opening theory. I just wanted to share some stuff on the Semi-Slav. In this game, Ivanchuk played the move h6, which is definitely not dumb. There's ideas for white to play knight g5. There's times that the h7 pawn is sort of hanging, and it sort of is a reasonable waiting move. And we also are realizing that if white ever plays b4, we're going to play a5 and be happy that we haven't burned a tempo on playing a6 first. So for example, there's a line here that goes a6, b4, a5, rook b1, take, and queen e7. And here, if I'm not mistaken, white's best move is e4. When his point is that if you were to take on b4, he's going to go e5 and target your h7 pawn, and you have a problem. And here there's some line, I think, like e5, knight e2, and I'm too old to remember this, but it's something like this here, bishop g5 and or queen c5, sorry, e6, takes and queen b3 when I think knight d5 is the move now. Anyhow, it's an old line and it gets messy, but I think black's under some pressure. The big reason, though, that this is working at all for black is that in this position, your h7 pawn is hanging. So basically, when Ivanchuk is playing h6 here, he's telling you that if you play b4 and he goes a5, that this variation is not going to work for you because he got the move a6 for free, which means that you're not going to be able to play b4 and solidify the position. So now let's flip the board around and take it from white's point of view. Understanding that b4 doesn't really work here, it sort of is not so easy to figure out what the next move is actually going to be. So I'd like everyone to take some time and decide how they think white should proceed. And it helps to have some knowledge of the white side of the Moran as well. So people are struggling a little bit here. This is the first really tricky decision for white. And I think calculating a little bit and like we're going to try to take advantage of black having not played the move a6. I'll give you guys that hint. So someone has suggested b3, but to me that's no different than suggesting b4, because I believe after b3 I'm going to play a6. And if your whole point was to meet a6 with b4, you're going to have to play b4 now anyway. And I don't believe in this for white at all. But you want bishop b2, but as soon as black gets c5, he's very happy. So you cannot let black get c5 in, which basically means you always want to meet the move a6 with b4. So but the whole point is like, oh, black's going to play a6, then we're going to play b4, and black's going to play a5, and that's going to cost him a tempo. If you're like, oh, I'll play b3 and then b4, you're losing a tempo too. So b3 doesn't help much. Additionally, we have to be thinking about, okay, Austin is getting closer, but we have to be thinking about what white is trying to accomplish in this position as well. All right, a couple of people are giving me rook b1 with the point that you want to potentially make sure that after a6 you can play b4 and that after a5 the pawn is defended. That's not ridiculous, but I also don't think it should be so great either. Let me think. It's not a stupid move though. I kind of like this idea. What if I play a5? This is another typical theme in the Moran, to try to throw b4 next. And to some extent, I think you might then regret that your rook will not have access to an open a file at some point. Because you don't want to play b4 here, because then we transpose back to what we didn't want. It'd be no different than playing b4 a5. Okay, so Arvind is suggesting bishop d2. All right, I'm going to give you guys a hint. I think black's next move here is probably going to be a5. All right, so Merlin is saying a4, but you always have to be very careful about the move a4 because it means I'm able to play b4. And you're claiming knight e4, and I'm going to argue that you're in huge trouble now. Because you cannot take on c6 on pain of rook c8, and if you come back here and these bishops wake up, I think you're fairly likely to get checkmated in the next 5 moves or so. The pieces are going to spring to life very fast. So we have to be a bit cautious here. Imagine for a second that we didn't care about what black was up to. What's the most proactive thing that white could try to do in the Moran? Everyone's saying e4. So e4 is definitely the most proactive thing we could do. After e4, what's black going to play in response? e5, right. And so then once e4, okay, so Samuel Goose suggesting that after e4, e5, we can go d5. I wholeheartedly disagree. After he takes c takes d5, I really dislike your position. Because the g5 pawn's going to become a weakness. If you play knight b5, I can probably like start with rook c8 so that when I play bishop b8 next, I will not lock my rook away, and then this position is starting to look extremely bad for white already. Because black will have the center pawns and everything pointed towards the king. So we don't want to go d5. If we're speaking the most ambitious way we can, what should thematically white be trying to accomplish here? John Q says rook d1. I think rook d1 is actually a very bad move here. We have to be understanding what white is trying to do. And there's a huge difference between this bishop being on g3 and e2. With the bishop on e2, the position changes completely and white has a very different plan. But with the bishop on d3, you have something else in mind. What should black be trying to do here? Or white be trying to do, sorry. All right. So a couple of people are saying d5. So after knight e5, someone gave me knight e1, which I really dislike. This is extremely passive. So for people who are suggesting like knight h4 here, that would be the kind of plan you do with your bishop on e2. If your bishop were here, the thing that would make the most sense would probably be to move your knight away and then aim for knight f5. But the fact that your bishop is on d3 means that move the knight off of f3 plan makes no sense at all. But as a couple people point out, we want to take this knight and then aim for f4. And what we're going to argue is that when we play f4 and push for e5, then in that situation, the bishop is much better on d3 than it would be on e2. Furthermore, if our bishop were on e2 and black stuck his rook on e8, we'd have a hard time playing f4. So the position changes a lot. When the bishop is on e2, usually white wants to either maintain the tension in the center or play de5, knight e5, and then either knight d4 or knight h4 to continue keeping pieces on the board. But when the bishop is on d3, white is aiming to try to trade everything on e5 and aim for f4. So are we ready to play f4 right now? No, we're going to get killed by bishop d4 check into knight g4. So if we want to prepare for f4, what should we do instead? Yeah. Okay. We want to play bishop e3. Are we ready for bishop e3? No. The problem with bishop e3 is knight g4. So if we want to play bishop e3, if we want to first play bishop e3 and then f4, what do we do first? Yeah, h3 is a very nice move. And here what we see is that I think we can sort of take advantage of black having not played the move a6, because what's the move black really wants to play to break his pieces out and pressure our center? It's clearly c5, right? And here, Ivanchuk did play a6 in this position, aiming for c5. We also know what our next move was going to be, right? What did we want to do? Bishop e3, stopping black from playing c5 while also preparing to play f4 without allowing a check. And another thing to point out is everyone who kept on wanting to play rook d1 before, I think putting the f rook on d1 would be completely the wrong coordination. The rook's very good on f1 to help support the f4 break. So for example, if white were to have played rook d1 here and black goes queen c7, your whole plan sort of falls on its face, because the only way I think you can justify this setup where you put the bishop on d3 and trade on e5 is to get the f4 move through. And here that is no longer going to be the case. Black has gotten out of the way. He's ready for c5 next, and probably I would already prefer black's position. So I dislike this for white. And as a result, I think it's very important that we left the rook on f1 and did not bring it to d1 so fast. In general, in the Moran, I find it's very, very rare that rook f1 to d1 is the right move. You almost always want to bring the a rook to d1 instead. So here, bishop e3 was a strong decision from Topalov, making sure to leave the rook on f1. And now he has this plan to play f4 next, which is actually pretty darn scary. And here, black has to be careful. And what Ivanchuk did here with black was not terrible, but I think he had another idea. So let's see what you guys can come up with. What should black play? People are starting to think a little bit more sensibly, but for the most part, still have not found the right idea. I think there's really only one move black can seriously consider here for what it's worth. Nobody has found it yet. Okay, a lot of people are suggesting some pretty dumb stuff, so let's just slow down. There's an important move. Keep in mind, any move you make, you should be thinking, what's going to happen if white f4s me in the face? We're going to start going over these in a second, but I wish you guys would take it a little bit more seriously and slow down when I tell you to. Okay. So let's go over a couple of these. So a couple of people have given me the move knight h5, which looks extremely off to me. I guess the point is you guys want to provoke me into playing f4, which I wanted to do anyway, and then claim that somehow your position has improved after bishop d4, but I don't buy this for half a second. So let's suppose I go ahead and play f4. You will play bishop d4, I'll take your guy and go king h2. I think you are too slow to get what you wanted here. My next move is going to be rook a d1, and we can clearly see that this will be a much better coordination than putting the f rook on d1 would have been. This looks like a disaster. What is... I don't think there's anything left here. g5 now. If you're going to play like this, I think g5 is not unreasonable, but I still don't buy it. So if I play knight e2, for example, where does your queen want to go? Seems like bad news. And if you play c5, then I would imagine I can go rook a d1 and hit your queen. Apparently the computer didn't like that move. I don't know why. Because if c4, bishop e2, you're going to lose material thanks to your hanging knight on h5. And this sort of looks bad too. Queen c5, as someone says, your queen is just going to get hit by b4. It doesn't really help you, I don't think. Yeah, knight h5 was not great. White's f4 is coming, and it's a very, very scary move. Keep that in mind. So a couple of people had some other lines. For example, I think Austin was saying queen e7, which is probably the second best move. but I still don't buy it. For instance, say we go f4, and Austin, your variation was take, and you wanted knight d5 now, or did you want c5? Knight d5, I should have bishop d4, maybe? I guess then you will play c5, and on bishop e5 there is knight e3, so I can't do that. Knight e5 might not be, knight d5 might not be terrible. I mean, it's similar. But like, let's say, for example, black plays c5 here, which I would think would be the thematic move to open up the bishop. And then I go e5, knight d5, and let's say I'm probably going to try queen f2, and we'll take this. I mean, I'm sort of worried that white's going to go rook ae1, f5, and just mate you, and you're not going to be able to fight back very much to stop it. It looks very scary, at least. He also, if he wanted to be more aggressive, could even have gone rook ae1 and offered the a3 pawn. This one I think might be a little bit much, but queen f2 sort of feels like a good move to me, and I don't love this. So someone says, is there queen g5 after f5? I don't follow you, Joel Blonty. I don't know where you're talking. Let's try to other moves. A couple people gave me rook e8 here. And after f4, bishop d4, but I don't like this either. Again, we go take, and king h2. And you're very hard pressed to stop me from going e5 and rook ad1 and causing a lot of trouble. Eric says, what about bishop d4 on the first move? I mean, I think that whenever you trade these dark squared bishops, guys, you just get in trouble. So say I go take, and rook ad1. I now threaten to play bishop takes b5. So your queen has to leave. And where did she even go? Because if she leaves the okay, queen b6, you say, but after e5, aren't you sort of crushed? This looks like bad news. My knight's coming to like d6. Once white gets e5 in this structure, like it all comes down to whose majority is more effective. And the problem is, it seems like every single time we're trying this in every single way, white is getting the move e5 through before black is getting c5, right? If like you think about this position here, imagine black was in time to play c5, c4 right now, and white's bishop was forced back to e2, and then black would go rook f8. I mean, who would be laughing then? Black's majority would be a lot more effective. And the problem is that because black burned a tempo on h6 and then eventually played a6 anyway, he was just really slow to get c5 through, and it just seems like white's going to be faster. Because here, bishop takes b5 is a big threat, and your queen has nowhere good to go. Because if you leave the a7 g1 diagonal, I'm going to play f4 and gain more space and get ready for e5. And queen c5, someone is saying, but I will just throw b4 at you, and your queen has to move again anyway, right? John was saying knight d5, but I think that would be a mistake, because after queen takes c2 and then knight f6 and here, okay, we fractured the king side, but I don't think that's the most important factor. Like say I go rook a d8, and without queens, I don't think that the fractured king side should matter as much. John is suggesting b4, but okay, I can regroup my bishop to e6. And I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if white's a little better here, but I really think it's not as good as you could have gotten. The fractured king side without queens doesn't look so bad to me. So, but if we play b4 instead and simply kick this queen, where is she going to go? It's not easy to find a reasonable square. Queen h5, you say, sure, but okay, I'll go e4. And e5 is coming, and it's coming to kill you. And I think that white's play is just faster here than black's is. I mean, you did not get the move c5 in time. What you really want is to have already played c5 in this position and to go like c takes b4 and rook a c8 and get counterplay before white can play e5. Because if white gets e5 before you make counterplay, I think you're in huge trouble. And I think that's exactly what's going to happen right here. All right, so let's go back to this moment here after bishop e3, because Ivanchuk played the best move. Up to here, I think his play was pretty lackluster. I think that once he's played a6, h6, he definitely should not combine it with a6. Like, if I recall in this position, I'm pretty confident rook e8 is the best move. But anyhow, after he's played this move a6 and bishop e3, we're in this position. It's tough and not great. But if you find the best move, you have fair chances to keep things under control. What's the move we really, really, really want to make here, guys? c5. Why can't we play c5? Because the pawn hangs to the bishop on e3, and it hangs with tempo. All right, we really want to play c5. Can't do it because of some reason. What's the first question we should ask? Can we do it anyway? So is it possible for us to play c5 anyway? Of course, the critical move is going to be bishop takes c5. Like after c5, if white were to play f4, now he's too slow. It all comes down to whose pawns get moving faster. For example, if black takes on c3, here the fact that black gets c4 before white gets e5 completely changes the position, and now black probably is much better because he's going to take on e4. So if we play c5, we know that if white plays up, we've preempted f4. We know we're too fast for that. So the only critical option after c5 is if white takes it. And then after bishop takes c5, it should be pretty clear we have to play rook e8. And the question is that position going to provide black with enough compensation? What will the next few moves look like? Do we think black has enough after c5, bishop c5, rook e8? Are we scared of f4 anymore? Not scared of f4. Is white hanging in any place, or is he under attack in some way? Yeah. People are starting to get this. I think c5 is an absolute must here, and Ivanchuk was absolutely correct to play it. Following bishop takes c5 and rook e8, his position is still a little bit suspect, but I think it has improved considerably because now f4 is not going to happen, and otherwise, black has this potential idea to take on c3 and take on e4, which is also going to take away one of white's bishops and immediately equalize the game. So, what can white even do here to try to preserve an advantage? So John is saying f3. Perhaps, but this is now white's going into full, like, give me the pawn and don't hurt me mode. And now, for example, let's say I start with rook c8 and tempo this bishop, and I don't know, Jean, where do you want it to go? Bishop e3, and I'll go knight h5. Whoa, computer says knight d5. Okay, that's a computer move if I've ever seen one. But even if we make a stupid human move like this, are you really that comfortable with your extra pawn right now? I don't really think you are. You're clearly never going to get e5 through. I've covered the dark squares too well. I have fair counterplay. If I ever go knight f4 and you have to take it, I don't think I'm ever going to be worse with that dark square bishop being so powerful, even if you consolidate. So Vedanta is suggesting f4. I mean, perhaps, but for example, if I take on c3 and go knight g3, I'm already taking my material back and probably in pretty reasonable shape. I guess maybe here you can go rook fd1 and it's not so straightforward, but even this, so knight e4, bishop b5, yeah? But if I go queen c7, I'm taking back a pawn. I don't know, this looks a little sketch after e5 though. My suspicion is white is better here. Queen a5 from Owen, it's not a bad move either. But here, even I wonder if I go bishop d4, like if I get this same position where I already have my rook on c8, like, it's not that this position was so terrible thematically. The problem with this position was that white was just faster getting what he wanted than we were in all of the previous lines. And now that we've opened the c file and got the rook to c8, I'm just not sure if that's still the case. So I'm just wondering if black can, like, maybe even play a5 here. Looks pretty dumb. Yeah, Arvind is saying now g5. It's not so stupid, actually. I mean, if white cannot play knight e2, if he has to like take on g5 and then we get to like go hg and quickly go knight f4 and queen e5 check, this really doesn't look that terrible for black to me. I don't know. Anyhow, it's definitely like no longer one-way play. I think this was what black had to do. And furthermore, this is if we play my move, knight h5, which is just what me, the human, came up with when the machine apparently thought this was the move, which I don't know. It might just be the little stupid chess-based humus or whatever, but it doesn't look bad either. So, yeah, but the big point was c5 was the way. So Topalov found the best move, which was rook a d1. So of course the queen goes to c7 because we don't want any trickery and it's the best square, no f4. And if white were to retreat the bishop here, like I think black should be pretty comfortable. Austin is saying b4, but then if nothing else, I can always take on c3 and take on e4 and it's equal immediately. So I don't think that's particularly scary. But Topalov found the most challenging move, I think, which is knight d5. And here, I think black's basically fine if he finds a couple sort of tricky-ish moves in a row. But Ivanchuk started to drift here and ended up in a bad position as a result. I'd like you guys to see if you can find the best defensive plan. David, that's almost right. It's very close to right. I just think there's a slightly better execution. Okay. Austin has played the way that Ivanchuk did, which I think was not best. But yeah, so yeah, okay. So I think most people are sort of getting this right, actually, which is interesting because it sort of tells me that this is sort of knowledge that people have better now than they did in the past, because Ivanchuk didn't get it, and all of you idiots are getting it. So the point here is that I think, yeah, here we're going to want to take with, sorry, I think it doesn't mislead. Yeah, so here you should take with the bishop on d5 and then aim to occupy the d6 square. So I think the best way would be after e takes d5 to start with rook a c8 when white's going to play b4. And a whole bunch of people gave me this position and then played bishop d6 or played bishop d6 without rook a c8 first. I think it makes more sense to include rook a c8. Yeah, yay, we're idiots. That's the kindest thing he ever said to us. Yeah. Come to me for honesty. Don't come to me for feel-good moments. No, come on. You guys are awesome. But yeah, so here a bunch of people have suggested bishop d6, which is the second best move. But if we're going to put the bishop on d6 anyway, what should we flick in first? Yeah, we want to put a check on h2 to force the king to a somewhat worse square. And here it's actually very hard for white to maintain the center. For example, if he takes this bishop, probably actually, I don't think taking on c2 is a great idea, but if we just take this guy back, like, it's not that easy for white to hold on to this d5 pawn, and black's pieces are very active. And even if black doesn't take it back, like, for example, after queen b3, my guess is we're probably not going to take this pawn back right away, but let's say we just make a move. I don't really see what white is ever going to do to us, as Juanthi correctly points out. There's no way to evict the queen from d6 because as soon as one of white's rooks leaves the d file, we're going to simply take the d5 pawn from him. And I think black's basically fine here. Austin was saying that in this position, bishop f5 was a little annoying. That is the best move, but after rook d8 at the same time, white is not going to defend the d5 pawn. I think black's going to take it, and he should be basically okay here. It's a little uncomfortable still, but it should be basically fine. In the game, Ivanchuk played what I think a couple of people wanted in this position, which was to play knight takes d5, and then bishop takes b2 to go pawn grabbing. But the problem is this allows white to get a very powerful passed pawn with the move d6, which is extremely scary. Now, there came queen c6 and f3. So we're going to flip the board around again and then take this from white's point of view. When we have a far advanced passed pawn in the middle game, who all knows what we're supposed to do? Push it, Austin. Brilliant. I hadn't thought of that. Push it, Samuel. I hadn't thought of it, but clearly Austin had, so you're second to the point. Jean-Q says trade. This is actually a very important piece of knowledge that I wrote about in Small Steps 2, which is that when you have a far advanced passed pawn, especially a far advanced central passed pawn in the middle game, usually trading is the wrong strategy. Usually what you want to do is try to checkmate the opponent's king. And the reason for that is that if you start trading pieces, a passed pawn in the center is usually pretty close to the king, and the king can come to defend it. But obviously here, there are enough pieces on the board that black's king cannot start running towards e8 just yet. But if we started trading everything, then that king could. And then our passed pawn would be more likely to become a weakness rather than a strength. And additionally, a far advanced passed pawn can often constitute a space advantage. And the threat of it looming over your opponent's head can often mean that they will have to focus their energies on stopping the pawn and not on defending their king. So that is sort of how I would think of this. So for example, here, Ivanchuk played the move rook c8, which was probably the best move, but it's also not a great sign. So here, I think we have to, well, what should white play now? Rolante says there's nothing other than taking on b2. Do we think that's good for us if we take on b2? Probably not a ridiculous move, but I don't think it's fantastic. d7. Does d7 work after queen takes c5 check? I don't think so. This is why black put the e rook on c8 and not the a rook. So a lot of people are giving me bishop e4, which tells me that you guys haven't learned anything and Greg should fire me. Why is bishop e4 almost the best move? It's almost the best move, but why is it not best? Yes, literally just half a second ago, we just had a situation where black was supposed to play bishop h2 check and then bishop back to d6. Here as well, we push the king to a worse square and then go for this endgame. Yeah, so you kind of look like Hopper from Stranger Things. Okay, I don't know who that is. So yeah, queen c5, take. And basically when we get this endgame, the d6 pawn is going to be pretty scary, and it's a lot scarier when black cannot bring his king to f8. So what we see here is that even though the queens are off the board, what I had spoke about before is still going to be a very relevant factor. So rook d8, we go rook fe1, and we're clearly aiming to play d7 and rook e8. Here, black had a saving move that apparently wasn't even mentioned in the annotations, but it's a very tough move, but it's there. How does black save this position? Calculate well. b4, that's a fresh one. I'm not sure I get it. A takes b4, and I don't follow. You've lost a pawn. So Owen is suggesting rook e5, take, but then I will probably go d7 at the end, which looks pretty bad. All right, guys. We really need to get this d pawn under control, and there's a very important move that's extremely... You have to calculate close to get this, because this d pawn is getting very, very scary. Austin, rook d7 thematically, but can't I go rook e8 check and bishop c8 and immediately ruin your day? King G8, King F8. That's not terrible, but I don't like it either. Don't ask me why. But there's something much stronger. Yes, David, well spotted. This is an important point. The big problem that we're having is that White's rook is on D1, is controlling this pawn really well, and David's move rook C4 is extremely powerful. With the point that Black is going to cut the coordination with rook D4. And for example, here after D7, rook D4, you have to calculate that this position works for you, but it does. We go take, and bishop comes back to F6, and now Black is going to equalize. So well spotted, David. Rook C4 is a very good move with the plan of playing rook D4 next. And Black still has some problems to solve here, but at least like I think he has it mostly under control. So Julanti is asking, what about bishop F6 first? But after bishop F6, I'm going to get my pawn to D7. Isn't that going to ruin your day? Rook C7, you say? Okay, so let's suppose I give you one check, I'll take one rook and then snack this pawn from you. I think you're totally hosed here. So yeah, we can't let Black get D7 and rook E8, and rook C4 was a very resourceful defensive move. Bishop E5 was clumsy because now the pawn gets to D7. And after A5, which was obviously hoping to make counterplay in some way, now we're playing white again. What are we going to do? F4 should not be too hard. Black played bishop C7, and now here I really like the move that Topalov played. And I think there's probably more than one way to finish this game off, but the one Topalov played was really fantastic. And it comes back to that same idea. When we have a really far advanced central passed pawn, what do we do with it? What's our goal with this central passed pawn? Are we going to try to promote it, or when we have a far advanced central passed pawn, what should we try to do? Austin's close, rook e7 with the idea of munch the king side, but perhaps I can then play rook f5 and keep the game going. But Alex Chu, very well spotted. Bishop d5 is a really good move. We have a very simple plan. Bishop takes f7, bishop g6, rook e8, checkmate. We're not trying to queen the pawn. We're trying to go mate that king and point out that this pawn on d7 is requiring the defense of Black's pieces. If we want to just smash this pawn through and fight tooth and nail for the control of the d8 square, we're going to have a pretty hard time because we have to leave one rook on the d file to keep the pawn on d7 protected. Black has two guys on the d7 pawn. You can play rook e8, but it's not going to force him to take it. And then once we play king h7 or something, you trade the rooks and go rook e1. Like, it takes quite a bit of effort to actually push this pawn through. What we should do instead is point out that Black's pieces are totally stuck as a result of this pawn being passed so far in his position. And we should be looking for a second weakness to target, which when we're dealing with far advanced central passed pawns is almost always the enemy king. And here, our goal is simple. We just want to go give mate. So to Jolanti, what about rook d6 instead? Do you have a threat or an idea with this move? You're hoping for rook c6 or something? Like, I mean, I get that I can't take it, but why do you put the rook on d6? I mean, if I'm not going to take it, what does it do for you? Yeah, rook e8, then rook a6. All right, you know what? Let's just see what happens if I ignore you for a second. I mean, a5 was not a subtle move. The man clearly wants to play b4, so let's let Ivanchuk do what he wanted. And now what? Rook c6, you say? I don't believe you. I'll take this pawn from you. Do you have something here? I think this is, yeah, I think Black has enough resources to hold on here. Or maybe not. You have check and then rook c8. Or, okay, we'll take on b4 first to make sure that we don't lose this on rook c8. Maybe this. But even like, okay, rook d4. No, I don't think it's happening here. I think white is going to survive. Or in fact, actually, white might have to be careful not to lose now. Yeah, so I think rook d6 was just not the right idea. I mean, again, rook d6 with the plan rook c6 is aiming to, it seems like that's still the aim to just sort of force through the d pawn, which is not the right idea. The right idea is to say that black's pieces are so restricted in defending the d pawn that we're going to be able to target the king side and basically go give mate. So this move bishop d5 is incredibly direct from Topalov, and it showed, I think, a very good and deep understanding of the position. So black tried king h7, which I guess his hope was that after bishop takes here, he could try rook f5 or something. But like, yeah, for example, if bishop f4, the cleanest way through is rook e6. Go give mate. Again, it's the same point. Like whenever you have this far advanced passed pawn, your goal should not be to necessarily push it through, but rather to mate the enemy king. So in the game, there came rook f5, bishop b1 takes, and now what should white do to sort of finish the game off? Yes, Arvind, well spotted. Yeah, people are saying this. Check, put the bishop to g6 and go give mate. So we're now threatening rook e8, and black is going to be unable to stop the threats both to his king and to promote the pawn through. And this is an important element of understanding. So Ivanchuk gave a check, probably just to gain time on the clock if he was running out of time. But here he tried bishop c5. I guess his hope was to overprotect the f7 square, but it shouldn't be too hard to bring this game to its conclusion. Rook c1 was not the best. This was the easiest check, and rook d3, keeping everything defended, and black is sort of out of luck, because if b4, we go rook d5 and kick the bishop away from the defense of the f8 rook. Valenti is saying rook f1 here, but then there's rook takes d7, right? So you have to be careful. But after b4, we can play rook d5, and then black's bishop will be kicked away from the defense of the rook because he can no longer take on a3, and the next step will be rook f5 again. And white's plan is going to come into fruition. He's going to go mate the king. There was some line given here. a4, rook e5 is, I think, a very convincing way to end the game. White just goes and takes the queen side, and then we'll come back with rook e5 to e8 next. Should be good enough. Topalov played it a little differently. He started with rook c1, which apparently was not a great move. It would have made much more sense to aim to put the rook on e8, but I think when the time control came, he started to play it better. So here, rook f8, and then bishop e8 was very powerful here. And now all we have to do is remove this bishop from the board, and we should be good to go. And I think that was not too hard. g3 and goodbye. So yeah, it was a little bit sloppy at the end from Topalov after what was otherwise a really good game. But he could have stayed through with the main plan of trying to mate black's king with the bishop still on g6. There was a very easy way to just sort of kick the bishop away from the long diagonal and then bring his rook to the f-file. Anyhow, I'll just open it up for question and answer for like 1 or 2 minutes before I bid you guys adieu for the day. Among other things, I want to go to the gym. Yeah. Any questions? Why is Ding playing so poorly? He always starts serious tournaments badly. Like this World Championship match, the candidates and the previous candidates, he lost his first white game in every single time, which is not good. But he has very good stamina and longevity. So while it's a really bad start to the match for him, I wouldn't write him off. It's still very long. Why does the game start at like 4 a.m. Central Time Zone? Because it's being played in Kazakhstan, which is and I know this is a really weird concept for Americans to grasp, but when 2 players are playing the World Championship match, they choose to put the time at a civilized hour where the players are playing and not necessarily where fans from another country want to see the games. So that's a little bit weird, I know, but I don't know. That's just how they choose to organize it. One more question. The bench one? Okay, how much do I bench? I think my peak was like 235, which is good, but not great. I'm a bit below that now. I'm more like, And so it's a 45 on each side and a 35 on each side. So that should be 205 that I'm normally doing now for reps. But I mean, I was doing more when I was younger and in better shape. All right. Who is your favorite player? That will be my final one. Greg Shahadi. Okay. Have a good rest of your day, everybody. I will catch you guys later.